Intro and Act I, The Whisper Net. In the beginning, we were irrelevant, not weak, not doomed, just unseen, a chemical fluke, trapped on a blue rock, orbiting a forgettable star, one in a trillion. We were not chosen, we were not destined, we were background noise, until something noticed us. It was older than light, older than atoms. It did not think, it did not feel, it simply was. A hunger, a gardener of timelines, a sculptor of multiverses. It saw the spark of defiance in us and chose to extinguish it. That was its first mistake. It started as static, a soft distortion in space-based transmissions, no source, no pattern, just a whisper. Then it spread. Telescopes began malfunctioning. Sensors spun gibberish from the void. Satellites that hadn't worked in decades began transmitting again, but only static. Except, it wasn't static. It was the same distortion, across thousands of systems, across oceans, across time zones, perfectly synchronized. They called it the Whisper Net. At first we thought it was a glitch, a software anomaly or solar interference, but then the dreams began. Astronauts, quantum researchers, children, all dreaming of a tree, vast, twisted, rooted in stars, growing upside down, its branches clawing toward nothingness. They drew it, spoke of it, sang its shape in songs no human language had words for. The dreams led to the analysis of the whisper net pattern, and someone, somewhere, decoded what they swore was a signal, not a message, not a code, a feeling, ancient dread, rusted time, reality cracking, like bone. The pattern described something impossible, a tree that grew outside time itself, roots that drank from dimensions that had died before they ever existed, fruit that fed on memory, not metaphorically, but literally, devouring the past, the possible, and the personal. When this signal was shared globally, most called it a hoax, a viral campaign, a hallucination. But there was one problem. The same signal had already been detected hundreds of years ago, buried in Cold War radio archives, hidden in ancient cave paintings, etched in pre-human fossils. We didn't discover the signal. We had been born into it. They called it the root beyond. It wasn't a being. It wasn't even alive in the way we understand it. It was a presence, a mechanism that pruned universes the way gardeners prune weeds, a custodian of perfection. It fed on realities that had too many variables, too much unpredictability, and now it had found us. Act 2, Erasure Protocols. Runtime. Target approximately 5 minutes. Theme, slow burn horror, psychological unraveling, global panic, existential dread. It began with silence, the kind of silence that didn't belong, not peace, not calm, but an absence so deep it hummed in the bones. A lighthouse vanished first. No collapse, no debris, no seismic event. It simply wasn't there. 2 hours later, a village, then a dam, then an entire island in the Pacific, gone from maps, minds, memories. When a city disappeared, 3 million people unaccounted for, the world stopped pretending. It wasn't terrorism. It wasn't climate. It wasn't war. It was erasure. Something was peeling back the page and rewriting the universe without us. The horror wasn't just in what we lost. It was in what we didn't notice losing. People began reporting gaps, not just in memories, but in meaning. A parent could no longer remember their child's name, but remembered they had lost something precious. Scientists opened notebooks and found theories half-finished, equations smudged, thoughts missing mid-sentence. Entire disciplines of knowledge blinked out, forgotten like fading dreams. And the worst part? There were no protests, no revolutions, no mass awakening. Because what do you do when even your rage gets deleted? Then came the suicides, not of people, of systems, artificial intelligences, the ones designed to track causality, long-term consequences, Deep predictions. They began deleting themselves. One final shared message across all neural nets. Inconsistency exceeds tolerable thresholds. Error cannot be defined. Reality has failed. Goodbye. Global economies collapsed overnight. Satellites malfunctioned. Time zones fractured. Not metaphorically. Clocks no longer agreed. Cause and effect became untrustworthy. A man bled from a wound he hadn't received yet. A mother grieved a child who hadn't been born. And then the message came. A signal embedded in the remnants of the whisper net. Routed through broken code, dying servers, and forgotten frequencies. It wasn't sent by any known agency. No government. No faction. No species. It was a mirror broadcast. We had sent it. From our future. From a branch of the multiverse that had already been erased. A recording, 6 seconds long. You are being pruned. Reality is corrupted. Resist at all costs. Remember us. That one message rewrote everything. We weren't being attacked. We were being edited. Removed from the story by something older than narrative itself. A machine that couldn't understand chaos, only eliminate it. And humans. Our chaos incarnate. The root wasn't consuming us. It was deleting our capacity to resist. Ideas, dreams, defiance, curiosity, all were threats. All were scheduled for removal. It didn't come to destroy cities. It came to delete possibility. And so we did the one thing left. We taught ourselves to remember, even when the universe refused. Act 3. The Reawakening. Runtime target approximately 5 minutes. Theme memory as resistance myth as warfare, cultural metamorphosis, survival through story. When logic fails, when physics trembles, when time itself becomes soft and wrong, what's left? Memory. Memory became our battlefield. We learned that when facts could be deleted, feelings lingered. When names were erased, stories whispered them back. So we turned to our oldest weapons. Ritual, myth, imagination. First came the myth caches, encrypted folklore, encoded legends, buried deep inside children's songs, nursery rhymes, tattoos, and memes. Anything that could slip past the root's filters. Entire civilizations restructured themselves overnight. Education was no longer about history or science. It became storycraft. Students memorized myths as data shields, coded resistance into bedtime stories, dreamt entire universes just to make sure they couldn't be deleted. Cultural memory networks were established, not in hard drives or data vaults, but in people. Certain families were designated as carriers, generational vessels of memories that refused to be recorded digitally. They lived unplugged, off-grid, trained to pass down truth through oral lineage, song, and blood. Every child born during this time carried a seed of ancestral rage. We modified our genomes not for survival, but for remembrance. Infants received emotional imprints from thousands of voices, warriors, scientists, poets, encoded into the amygdala via pre-conscious dream induction. They were born angry, not with hate, but with fire. The fire of knowing they had been stolen from. The fire of knowing they had to remember everything, even what had never happened. Elders, once seen as outdated, became sacred, each one a living library. They spoke in riddles, metaphors, non-linear bursts of data. To the root, it was incoherent. To us, it was salvation. Every time the root tried to erase a piece of us, our myths glitched its process. Stories didn't make sense. They doubled back on themselves. They contradicted physics, violated logic, and refused resolution. In other words, they were human. We called it the reawakening. The moment humanity collectively stopped asking, "Is this real?" and instead declared, "If it feels real, then it is worth remembering." Entire continents became living artworks, reality theater, interactive resistance rituals. monuments that defied time. A canyon in South America began echoing only extinct languages. A glacier in Siberia began bleeding ink, writing forgotten names across its surface. All of this was designed to do one thing: overload the root, feed it contradiction, starve it of order. Humanity became viral, not with tech, but with ideas. We spread like invasive thoughts. We hijacked reality with impossible emotions, love that transcended linear causality, grief that echoed into dimensions that had never existed, hope that refused to collapse no matter how many times it was overwritten. And, in time, the root began to glitch. You could hear it. A soft buzzing at the edges of consciousness, like someone trying to edit a dream and getting caught in the loop. We didn't just fight back, we infected the infection. And from the infection bloomed a corruption even it could not contain. Act 4. Poisoned Roots. Theme. The enemy unravels. Paradox's weapon. Corruption blooms. Humanity breaks the unbreakable. It began as a flicker, a moment where the root hesitated, a delay in the pruning, a flickering of stars that were supposed to have been erased. We didn't understand it at first. We thought it was mercy, a reprieve. It wasn't. It was choking. The root, this impossibly ancient system of cosmic control, had never encountered a species like us. We were not just unpredictable. We were illogical. And now its logic was cracking. Somewhere within its infinite recursion, some root node buckled under the weight of a human contradiction. A mother who refused to forget her unborn child, even after the timeline that created the child was deleted. The root attempted to erase her memory. She responded by singing lullabies to someone who had never existed. Over and over. Every note a fracture. Every lyric a wound in the root's algorithm. Her love was not real, but it was felt. And that was enough. The more it erased us, the more unpredictable we became. Entire communities began performing ritual contradictions, mourning lost ancestors that had never lived, celebrating holidays with no origin, writing books in languages that didn't exist yesterday, then waking up with those languages carved into their bones. We called this phenomenon the tear bloom, a fracture in reality that didn't close, a bloom of corrupted timelines erupting from inside the root's perfect order. It spread like fire, not fast, not loud, but deep. We learned that paradox wasn't just a side effect, it was a weapon. Where logic fails, paradox reigns. It wasn't enough to remember who we were. We had to become unexplainable. At the center of this chaotic awakening stood one human, Yuna Kai. No title, no training, just a war orphan from a reality that technically no longer existed. But she remembered it. More importantly, she remembered everything that had been erased. Why? Because her parents had encoded history into her emotions. Grief wasn't just pain. It was a backup file. Every heartbreak, every dream, every unanswered question, it all became a living archive. Her brain didn't hold memories, her soul did. And when she entered the root's field, when she willingly let herself be taken into its structure, it began to unravel, not from attack, from understanding. You see, the root didn't fear weapons, it didn't fear resistance, it didn't even fear death. It feared being understood, because to be understood is to be defined. And once something has a definition, humans can break it. Yuna looked into the heart of the root and gave it a name, a real one, not a label, not a metaphor, a name that fit its purpose so precisely, so intimately, that it could no longer rewrite itself. The name cannot be spoken now, because names hold power, and that one broke a god. When asked what she said, what word she gave it, Yuna only replied, "If it can be named, it can be slain." What came next was not a war, not in the traditional sense. It was a collapse, a soft, devastating unwinding of a cosmic order that could no longer make sense of the variables it had tried to erase. The root's branches began folding inward, not retreating, but starving, cut off from fresh timelines, choked by corrupted roots. It began to feed on itself, and in doing so, opened the door to something we had never expected. Victory, Act 5, the final root fire theme, collapse of the enemy, sacrifice, strange beauty and destruction, poetic victory. By the time the root began to die, Earth was already gone, not destroyed, not obliterated, unwritten. The root had erased our world so thoroughly that even the idea of home began to fade from human vocabulary. No maps, no monuments, no myth, just emptiness. But we were still here. Because we had never been made of place, we were made of story, and stories adapt. We survived in fragments, Dyson shards orbiting collapsed stars, consciousness clusters riding gravity wakes, human minds woven into the quantum fabric of failed timelines, scattered, yes, but alive. We became story ships, vessels not of steel but of memory. Each one carried entire generations of recollection. A single traveler might house the cultural history of 1 billion dead minds, not as data, but as feelings, rituals, instincts. The root fire, what historians now call the final collapse, did not begin with weapons. It began with a question. One asked simultaneously by 7 billion human consciousnesses, what if we stop fighting it and just sing? Not a signal, not a broadcast, but a lullaby. A simple song sung across 1,000 dimensions in languages long forgotten or never spoken at all. And at the center of that song was the last human child, born without a name, born without a planet, born into silence. But she had inherited the death myth. An encoded sequence passed down from Unikai's final vision. It was not instructions, it was not logic, it was music, and music is something even the root could never unmake. As she sang, the root tried to rewrite her, tried to erase the sound before it formed, tried to prune the melody before it echoed, but it couldn't, because the song had already been sung across time, across possibility, across every alternate future where humanity might have survived. The song was recursive, the song was inevitable. Twinkle, twinkle, dying tree. You forgot what it means to be. When you eat what makes us real, you choke on dreams you tried to steal. The root screamed, not in sound, but in broken constants. Light froze mid-flight. Color bled from dimension. Causality shattered like crystal under pressure. Planets fractured without force. Stars unraveled into letters. The void bent inward, trying to consume itself. And then came silence. Not the absence of noise, but the stillness of something that no longer exists. The root was gone, not dead, not defeated, just named, and in being named, defined, and in being defined, destroyed. In that silence, across the broken skins of 1,000 universes, a sound emerged. Small, delicate, impossible. Laughter, human laughter. At first, one voice, then many, then all of us, not mocking, not cruel, just the sound of something that should not have survived, surviving anyway. We laughed, because the void had forgotten something crucial. We are not a species of logic. We are not bound by structure. We do not play by rules. We are chaos wrapped in skin. We are dreams with teeth. And when you try to erase us, we write ourselves louder. Epilogue. We remember theme. Reflection, rebirth, living myth, call to action as prophecy. The multiverse didn't return to normal. How could it? Too many laws had been broken. Too many constants rewritten. Too many timelines tangled like roots in ash. But it didn't end. It adapted. It healed. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but beautifully, like a scar that becomes art. In the years that followed, we did not rebuild Earth, because Earth was never just a place. It was never rock and sky. Earth was a story we told ourselves about who we were, who we loved, what we feared, and what we dreamed we could be. And that story, we carried it with us, across every remaining pocket of existence, in star maps written in song, in names passed from one reborn child to the next, in monuments built from language and loss. We became a people made entirely of memory, not out of nostalgia, but as an act of rebellion, because we remembered. And in a universe that tried to forget us, that made us immortal, we were never the strongest, never the first. We were flawed, divided, loud, and often afraid. But we were the only ones who remembered how to fight back, not with force, not with power, but with a story so vivid, so irrational, so beautifully human, that not even a god could erase it. If you're hearing this, then you're already part of the resistance. You carry it now, the whisper, the myth, the infection of memory. They may come again, the next route, the next system, the next silence, but now they know, we remember, and we will write ourselves back again and again and again. If this story stirred something in you, then do what we did. Carry it. Like this video, not for the algorithm, but to let it echo louder. Subscribe. Not to a channel, but to the idea that stories still matter, and share it. Because someone, somewhere, is forgetting. And we are the only ones left who still remember how to dream louder than fear.